Update, brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300. Manx Radio's Update with Andy Wint.
Pastor Mike, good evening. It's 5:30. This is Update for Tuesday, 1st of August 2023 from Manx Radio. 30 minutes to look at the latest news on the Isle of Man. A background to the news with sport and business and Sea Watch and travel updates. And the newsmakers in person this evening. Online journalist freedom of information request has been released. Treasury Minister tells departments if no savings, it'll be cuts. Energy efficiency scheme hands out 10,000 light bulbs. Father issues warning after his son swallows a battery, and emergency services recognise 50 years on from the Summerland fire.
Man Benham for all your business and legal needs.
First of all, at 29 minutes ahead of 6 o'clock, the Update News headlines. Fastamai William King.
Fastamai, almost all of the original information in a coronavirus presentation from the Isle of Man's former medical director was presented to the Council of Ministers in March 2020. But the Department of Home Affairs has admitted its chief executive used a poor choice of words in an email about how it would be presented. Manx Care is on track to make savings of around £10 million this year. The Treasury Minister says other departments may need to stop or scale down some services to ensure they meet their budgets. Manx actor Samantha Barks is having a baby. She and husband Alex Stoll made the announcement on Instagram earlier. In international news, the UK Prime Minister's been heckled by a publican after he visited a beer festival on the day alcohol duty's gone up. Rudy Kaser runs a pub in Wimbledon and says he couldn't believe the audacity of Rishi Sunak. A British man who killed his seriously ill wife has visited her grave for the first time after being released from prison in Cyprus. David Hunter was jailed for 2 years for the manslaughter of Janice, but was released yesterday. And the cost of rural crime in the UK has gone up by nearly a quarter. The insurer NFU Mutual estimates £49.5 million was lost in 2022, nearly £10 million more than the year before. Those are the Update News headlines.
Man Benham. Contact us by phone, video call, email or face-to-face. We're happy to connect with you. Manx Radio Weather with Manx Glass and Glazing.
Jeremiah, thank you, William. From the Ronaldsway Met Office, there is a strong wind warning in operation for later on tonight in the North Irish Sea. State of sea slight or moderate. And the weather, dry with some late brightness, a light southerly wind. After dark, the wind will pick up and the rain will return on a moderate breeze, down to 14 through the night. For Wednesday, Ukraine, a wet start on a strong easterly, drying up later on a fresh northerly. Top temperature 17, dry overnight, minimum 14 into Jardine. Dry and bright in a strong blustery northwesterly on Thursday, up to 17 Celsius. Tide still on the way out for about another half an hour or so. Low waters at 18 minutes past 6, sunset 18 minutes past 9, high tide 11 minutes after midnight, sunrise 28 minutes before 6, and the morning low tide at 25 to 7.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
Almost all of the original information in a coronavirus presentation from the Isle of Man's former medical director was presented to the Council of Ministers, but the Department of Home Affairs has admitted that its head civil servant used a poor choice of words in an email about how it would be presented. The story from Christian Jones.
Today, the Department of Home Affairs published its delayed response to a Freedom of Information request submitted by Isle of Man TV journalist Paul Moulton. He's been seeking to establish how medical and clinical advice from Dr. Rosalind Ranson and others was handled by then Health Minister David Ashford and senior civil servants. Mr. Moulton asked for confirmation of whether selective or toned-down versions of her information had been presented between the 13th and 24th of March 2020. In response, the DHA has released a timeline of correspondence between civil servants and the emails sent between the relevant parties. On the 13th of March that year, an internal presentation was made within DHSC by Dr. Ranson to the Coronavirus Working Group, describing the impact the pandemic was likely to have on the health service. The chief executive of the DHA, Dan Davis, requested a copy of the presentation so that he could share it with the chief secretary, Will Greenhow, in order to brief the Council of Ministers. A small group of officers then worked on the presentation to Komen, which the DHA said had to be presented in a compelling way for ministers to understand. The FOI response adds that it is aware of speculation about Mr. Davis' use of the words toned down in relation to some of the doctor's slides in an email to his colleagues. In it, he adds the information should be kept at a high level so that Komen didn't get into the weeds. The DHA says on reviewing the email in the context of other emails appears to show simply a poor choice of words. It adds that almost all the original information in Dr. Ranson's presentation in terms of potential impact faced and the nature of mitigations which should be considered was included. The DHA says the meeting with Komen resulted in the decision to introduce emergency powers and a range of unprecedented constraints on the public which were not envisaged by the Council even 2 weeks prior to that presentation.
The Treasury Minister is urging government departments to spend the summer working to find savings. Giving evidence to the Economic Policy Review Committee, Dr. Allinson MHK said there could be service cuts if savings can't be made.
In terms of individual departments, each of them have been tasked to look at their cost improvement plans. The most obvious one is Manx Care, who actually have set out that they want cost improvement plans amounting to up to £10 million this year, and they are on track probably to achieve that, but we need to instill the same fiscal discipline with other departments as well, and that will mean sometimes doing things in a smarter way. It may mean stopping certain things that don't add value to their services, or it may mean scaling down some of those services. And as I said, we're certainly trying to work with the individual departments to give them the help and assistance they need to come in on budget by the end of this financial year if possible.
How do you expect these honest conversations to go with the bank's public that we're going to be cutting possibly services?
I think, again, we have to be realistic, and we have to ensure that people are brought along with that message and understand the reason for doing that. That if we are going to meet a budget, if we are going to stay within that budget as much as possible, because we saw last year that sudden events internationally can really affect the way that we have to spend money on our island, that people understand the reason for it, that they're not cuts for the sake of it, but they're done for a reason, and for the reasons of preserving and prioritising frontline services, such as health, such as education, such as social care, such as our benefit system for the most vulnerable. But it's certainly, I think it is difficult, and it is that communication both within Tynwald's and Tynwald members and to the wider public that is key to this.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates, advising businesses and families since 1949. Visit simcox.com or call 690 300.
It's day one of the new air traffic control regime at Ronaldsway. Everything looks on time. Details later in the travel news. Police say they'll speak to the former boss of Abbotswood nursing home over allegations she's made in an interview about her experiences over the COVID-19 pandemic. Zandra Lewis's 1-hour video with the Manx People's Community Support Group has been watched by more than 4,000 people. And story from Tessa Hawley.
In it, the former director and registered nurse of the Ballasalla facility details what happened from her perspective during the outbreak of coronavirus in 2020. In April that year, the Department of Health and Social Care suspended her licence to operate and took over the running of the home. 20 Abbotswood residents died from COVID-19 during 2020, 18 at the home and 2 in Nobles Hospital. In the video published via BitChute, Ms Lewis disputes that there was reason for her licence to be revoked and makes a number of allegations relating to the DHSC's intervention. A joint investigation by police and the Health and Safety Inspectorate was started in April 2020 after officers were alerted to concerns in respect of the condition of the facility. 2 months later, they were supplied with information which indicated there may be criminal offences which needed investigation. A detailed probe into these started in July that year. The following year, in June 2021, the Isle of Man Constabulary confirmed that no criminal charges would be brought against any individual or company. In response to Ms Lewis's interview, the Isle of Man Constabulary told Manx Radio the broad outline of the allegations was known to the original investigation team. It says the interview contains no new factual information and the available evidence in the case was reviewed by independent legal counsel at the conclusion of the joint investigation. Ms Lewis, the constabulary adds, subsequently accepted a caution for several breaches of health and safety regulations. The constabulary says it will make contact with Ms Lewis to ascertain whether she has any new evidence which was not considered by the official inquiry. It says it will not be providing further comment at this time.
A father's warning people to ensure that toys and remote controls are secure after his 4-year-old son accidentally swallowed a button battery. Ryan Taylor's son Caden was rushed to Nobles Hospital by his grandmother last week. The duo were then airlifted to Alderhay, where the Douglas man met them.
When I got off the plane, I ended up having to get a taxi straight down to Alderhay. I've been with Caden ever since that. I went down to theatre with him. From that point, I've just been by his side, but it wasn't very nice not being there with him. When obviously he swallowed it, it started going down his throat and it got stuck in his esophagus. When he came out of theatre, they explained to us that the battery had severely damaged his insides by his esophagus, and it was a couple of inches of burning a hole, and he told us that he was going to be transferred to critical care unit, where he was there for 3 days. He's on the road to recovery now. He's still on a milky diet, so he can't eat any foods, any hard food. He's only allowed to have milk and water, and he's only allowed to eat Weetabix. I want just to get it out there, if any parents go through this, please get medical help immediately. Do not leave it. We were lucky to get Caden up to A&E straight away, because we noticed that had happened literally a couple of minutes afterwards, and we got him up there ASAP, and we were just in time to get the battery out. Otherwise things could have been a lot worse and Caden might not have been here today. And it needs to be made aware that how serious a battery can be with the acid in it and the alkaline. When they join together, it attracts to the skin and it burns straight through the skin very, very quickly. Make sure all toys, remotes are sealed and children can't get near batteries. Get medical help immediately. Do not leave it. Leave your house, leave whatever you're doing, and just get straight up to A&E or your nearest medical centre and get help.
Sea Watch with the Isle of Man Steam Packet Company.
Mothership Ben McCree left Heysham at 2:15. She's into the bay, almost in the harbour at the moment. In Douglas, will be departing this evening at 7:45 for Heysham, arriving at 11:30, departing at 2:15 a.m. Back at 6 tomorrow morning. The fast craft Manannan departed Douglas at 21 minutes past 3. She's in the Mersey now at the moment. We're on the link span by the Liver building at about 6:05, departing at 7:15, back to Douglas at 10 tonight. Tomorrow morning's departures, 7 a.m, Manannan heads to Belfast, 8:45, Ben McCree to Heysham.
Like the Steam Packet on Facebook for the latest sailing information.
Former Chief Minister Tony Brown said it's time for the Isle of Man to think about regulating online news outlets. According to Mr Brown, comments came in response to that dispute between the Isle of Man government and the online Isle of Man television, which publishes its content on YouTube. Here's Tony Brown.
It actually demonstrates why there is a need, I think, to licence web internet type facilities that are bringing news to the people of the Isle of Man. If you, for example, were to license a company that's operating as Isle of Man TV, then in fact the government benefits because, one, you've licensed it, they're brought into similar controls as the rest of the established press. I use that term very carefully, and the public will then judge whether they listen to the established press or whether they listen to gossip. And I think there's a big difference between gossip on the internet and proper reporting. You have to, as Manx Radio, act in a certain way. Isle of Man newspapers have to act in a certain way. And if you go back 100 years, there were fringe newspapers in the Isle of Man who were also licensed. The equivalent of what you could say now is the Paul Moulton Isle of Man TV or Isle of Man News and so on. But they were licensed, and that gave it some sort of status. and it gave it some sort of way of the other side know how they should act, and the enforcers, if I use that term very carefully, making sure they were free to do their job. And I think at the moment, and I said this before, the whole world's having this problem. It's not an Isle of Man issue. And, people have to understand that. The media and the freedom of, Facebook and Twitter and everything has changed how we all live. And governments always are behind on that. And they need to be careful they don't over-regulate.
Manx Radio Business Briefing.
At 5:45, Aston Martin Lagonda raised fresh capital in a discounted share offering. The sports car maker announced it had successfully sold 58.25 million shares at 371p each, a 6.2% discount in their closing price from the day before. Gross proceeds of the sale, £216.1 million. Proceeds from the sale will be used to hit its net leverage targets more quickly and to become free cash flow positive from 2024. They will also support the capital investments needed for its electrification strategy, which foresaw roughly £2 billion worth of investments over 2023-27. For a full daily market report, go to ramseycrookall.com. Strong travel bookings have defied a steep rise in airfares, reported to have increased about 30% in Europe this year. Airlines, including BA's owner IAG and Air France KLM, reported record profits last week, noting customers are prioritising holidays while high-spending travellers are filling business class cabins. PwC analysis reckons the current travel surge is being fuelled by the grey pound. That's over 65-year-old consumers who are most willing to allocate funds to activities they were restricted by the pandemic. However, some travel industry insiders say the boom may not be sustainable. Heathrow boss John Holland Kay questions how long people will be able to pay extremely high ticket prices.
The Stock Market Report. Brought to you by Ramsey Crookall.
UK and European markets were lower as investors digested a busy week of earnings. The pound fell, oil hovered around 3-month highs, and gold retreated as the dollar firmed. The numbers from Ramsey Crookall. At the close in London, the FTSE 100 down 0.4% at 7,666. The DAX in Frankfurt closed down 1.25% at 16,240. A short time ago, New York City, the Dow Jones Industrial barely up 0.06% at 35,536. The Nasdaq Tech Stocks Index down 0.4% at 14,285. And in the Midwest, in Chicago, the S&P 500 is down 0.4% at 4,572. But the trading day continues. In the exchange markets, the British pound sterling is trading at $1 27.4 cents, €1 16.2 cents, and 23 South African rand 25.6 cents. In commodities, gold's down just over 1% at $1,943 per troy ounce, and a barrel of Brent crude's down 0.5% at $84.78.
You've got an investment plan?
Yeah, Mike set it up.
But don't you need loads of money to do that?
Not this one. It's called Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, and you pay in monthly as little as £100. So it's like saving regularly, really helping us invest in the future for a house, or the kids' education.
£100 a month? I could easily do that.
You should. The sooner you start, the better.
Invest in your future with as little as £100 a month. Shearwater from Ramsey Crookall, the island's investment specialist for 75 years. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
This is Update on Manx Radio at 11 minutes before 6. Emergency services across the island have been formally recognised for the role they played in responding to the Summerland fire almost 50 years ago. Godfrey Kane was a lead fireman on the night of the blaze and spoke about the impact it's had on him.
I remember the night of the fire clearly. The days that followed on, they're just a blur. In the years that followed that, we all suffered with PTSD in one form or other, although we didn't know what it was. They've got a name for it now. It wasn't then. I didn't talk about it outside the fire service for about 12, 15 years.
And do you feel like you've recovered from that since?
Oh yeah, got over it eventually, but initially it was flashbacks, waking up covered in sweat, trembling. It took quite a long time.
In a speech given by the Chief Minister, he said healthcare workers rallied to assist the injured. Ambulance drivers, paramedics, pharmacists, doctors, nurses, the list goes on. So I asked the head of the ambulance service, Will Bellamy, what the challenges would have likely been on the night.
Back in 1973, there wasn't necessarily a uniformed ambulance service. It would have been a multitude of services from Nobles Hospital, voluntary sector ambulances, Central Ambulance, British Red Cross, and also dealing with an incident of the size, shape and scale that has probably ever been eclipsed unless into recent events as far back as recent as Grenfell, that we wouldn't have known what we was dealing with or how to deal with it, with limitations in equipment, kits, training, knowledge that 1973 had, that today we have got better knowledge, kit and equipment. Testament to the responders then that when running into a situation people are running away from.
Update brought to you by Simcox Advocates. Manx Radio Sport.
That's to my Rhiann Evans.
That's to my good afternoon. Well, in cricket, there's been a clean sweep of wins for the Isle of Man women's cricket team in their bilateral series against Austria. In their third and final match yesterday, the Manx side came out on top, completing a 3-0 series win. And the squad not only celebrated strong performances, but also international debuts in Emma Miller, Bliss Murtagh and Caitlin Henry. There's no rest for the Manxies though. They're heading straight to Bucharest today to compete in the Women's Continental Cup. A brand new festival dedicated to one of the fastest growing racket sports is taking place at the NSC next month. The inaugural Isle of Man Pickleball Festival is running over Saturday the 9th and Sunday the 10th of September, 8:30am until 6pm. Now, if you haven't played or heard of pickleball before, it's a mixture of tennis, table tennis and badminton, and it pits 2 or 4 players against one another to hit a perforated ball over a net on a court about half the size of a tennis court and can be played indoors or outdoors. During the festival, 8 courts will be set up at the NSC for competitors both local and from off-island, and the aim of this festival is to promote the growth and development of pickleball in the Isle of Man. More details on how to get involved can be found on the Manx Radio Sports Hub. And a 9-strong team is heading to Trinidad and Tobago today to represent the Isle of Man in the Youth Commonwealth Games. The Manx squad will be competing in swimming, athletics and cycling. The Games, which are taking place from the 4th till the 11th of August, will see more than 1,000 young athletes from 71 nations competing in 7 sports.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Don't fall off your seat, everything's fine at Ronaldsway. Inbound this 5 o'clock EasyJet from Liverpool came in 8 minutes past 5. Next inbound, it's the 5:08 Loganair from Liverpool, the 8:15 EasyJet from London Gatwick, and the 8:30 Loganair from London City. They're all on time. Outbound 6 o'clock Loganair to Liverpool, and the 8:45 EasyJet back to London Gatwick. On the roads, Garth Road is closed near Foxdale between Tosselby Road and the Foxdale Road. They're replacing a bridge there. East Quay Peel closed between the House of Manannan and the Road Bridge. Ballymena Road Jerby's got some phased closures. Temporary lights on Victoria Road at the Falconcliffe Terrace Junction in Douglas, and York Road's closed between Woodburn Road and Ballaquail Road, Douglas. Annika Road and Cushag Road closed in Farm Hill for resurfacing, phased closures. In Kirkmichael, there are 24-hour 3-way signals on the main road for snagging work. Douglas Road in Ballacella's got 2-way traffic signals 24 hours a day for duct laying. In Blackboards, just down the road, 3-way signals for friction surfacing and line painting. And lights at Bulgham on the Coast Road for wall repairs. In Glenmona, temporary lights on the Coast Road for patching work. Ballagorn Road, Baldrine's closed for drainage work. And in Oncombe, Groudle Road's closed between Harbour Road and Fairway closed for gas upgrade work. Just a note for tomorrow, the 2nd of August, the DOI Summer Surface Dressing Programme is on. Temporary closures tomorrow at Santon, Station Road, Port St Mary and Lurgy Crippety in Union Mill.
H&HMotorcycles.im for all your motorcycle requirements. Southgate Industrial Estate, opposite Quayside Tyres. Call 665646.
If you have a news story for Manx Radio to investigate and report, email newsroom@manxradio.com or call 682 631 any time of day or night.
As many as 10,000 LED light bulbs and 5,000 applications for loft insulation are among the support handed out so far to residents of the Isle of Man as part of the energy efficiency scheme. The Manx government unveiled the plan earlier this year, which looks to give up to £750 worth of materials at cost of living support to make homes more economically viable. Julie and Ryan are from the Energy Doctor Service.
What we do when we go to people's homes, we have a chat and they talk to us about any concerns that they may have. We undertake a quick survey of the property and we then implement immediate energy saving measures.
We are trying to help the most vulnerable people, so potentially looking at people of an older age that may not be able to implement these things themselves, which is where we step in.
Obviously, to make any significant improvements to the energy efficiency of your home, you're going to have to pay for those improvements, such as new windows, doors, loft insulation, etc., etc. So I suppose that would be a fundamental barrier. But obviously, loft insulation is something which will dramatically improve the efficiency of your home. So it is a really good product that is available for free within a budget on this scheme.
Not all people know how to install and implement these items that are on offer. We go to people's properties, we can advise them on how to install them, show them how to install them, and also do some installation for them whilst we're there.
Definitely get loft insulation installed. There's so many lofts that we look in and there's hardly any insulation or just a couple of inches.
Boiler settings to make sure that you're not overheating central heating systems, using things like TRVs on your radiators so you're not heating rooms that aren't in use.
And also reducing drafts.
LED light bulbs can actually make a saving of about 85%. These improvements can make massive reductions in, ultimately, energy costs.
That's it for Update tonight, compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's news department. Thanks to newsreader William King, producer Rhiann Evans. Summerland 50 Years On is after the news with John Moss. The Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley at 6:30. The Folk Show at 9 with John Barker, and I'm back tomorrow at 5:30.
WINT